Well, welcome everyone to our DBT-LBC panel discussion. We have a wonderful Brady Bunch crew here today to talk about individual certification, program certification, and volunteering. I am Amy Eisenman. I'm a therapist with Peachtree DBT in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm going to be helping to moderate today. Make sure we can all get some of our questions answered and get some information about the certification process.
With us today, we have Dr. Kimberly Vey, who is the president of the DBT-LBC Board of Certification from Atlanta, Georgia, from Peachtree DBT. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
We also have Britt Rathbone, founder and director of Rathbone and Associates from Maryland. Hello, Britt. Thank you for joining us.
Hi there.
We have Dr. Belinda Bellett from New York, who's the founder and director of Brooklyn Heights Behavioral Psychology Associates. Hello, Belinda.
Hello.
We have Dan Finnegan, who is the treasurer of the DBT-LBC Board of Certification. Dan comes from Kirkland, Washington, and he is the clinical director of Cadence Child and Adolescent Therapy.
Hey. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Dan. We also have Emily Vanderpool, who comes from Memphis, Tennessee, from Cardia Collective. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
We have Dr. Jessica Chu, who is a therapist coming from Raleigh, North Carolina. Hi, Jessica.
Hi.
We have Dr. Kelly Grayling coming from New York. She is the assistant clinical director of cognitive and behavioral consultants. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
We have Dr. Lauren Bonavidecola. Oh, so close. Did I get it?
No,
I got
you got it.
Okay, cool. Coming from New York, who is the director of the trauma-focused treatment program at Cognitive and Behavioral Consultants. Hello, Lauren. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Amy.
And we have Dr. Nikki Winchester from Cincinnati, Ohio. She is a clinical psychologist and owner of the Cincinnati Center for DBT.
Hi there.
And last but not least, we have Dr. Sylvia Davidson from Chicago, Illinois, who's the assistant clinical director and a clinical psychologist at the Chicago DBT Institute. So thank you all for joining us today.
Okay, so we have slightly decreased the size of our group, and we have 4 of our panelists with us to talk about individual certification. So the goal of all of the 4 of us, or I guess the 5 of us, really the 4 of you speaking today, would be just to answer some of the most commonly asked questions about the process of certification, as well as some of the pitfalls that do occur during this process. We just want to make sure that we're all being as clear and transparent about it and trying to encourage people to come and do programs or individual certification, excuse me. So let's go ahead and get us started. So there are many clinicians, myself included, who don't really know exactly where to begin with this whole certification process. And it can be very daunting just looking at everything to begin with. Can we start with just explaining what are some of the initial steps for clinician certification?
Yeah. So the initial step is really to open up an application, to start an application that really will ease the anxiety. And so to get to the application, we just need to go to our website, dbt/lbc.org, and under the Clinician Certification application tab. And you can create a login and start the application from there. We'll give you a tip while you're filling it out. We're going to be going through components of it. And while you're filling it out, if you put an X or some mark in sections, you can move on to other sections. As long as you don't submit, nothing is going to submit. So you can work through the application as you have the components and be able to sort of look through it and see what it is that is needed, that can help. Once the application is finished and it's submitted, then it will be reviewed within 2 months. So then you will either get revisions that are required, feedback about that, or approved. The good thing is, if you get revisions, we give you feedback. So we tell you what you need to revise. We tell you what needs to be changed, what needs to be added, or sections that are maybe incomplete, dates might be off. So you will get all of that feedback if you're given revisions. And that
nice.
feedback should come within 2 months around 2 months after submitting the application.
Okay. Thank you, Kim.
Mhm.
So as many people are starting to prepare the application, a lot of people are going to ask, like, what are these individual sections that Kim, you said you can kind of put a mark and go to the next section. So what are these individual components that we're going to be looking at in the application?
The first part of it starts with just sort of some like basic demographics. So looking at sort of your employment history, your licensure, education. So there's some pretty basic stuff up front, and then it gets into several other components too.
I think I was gonna jump in next. There's DBT team experience. So you have to be a part of a consultation team actively at the time that you're applying. You need to be on a team, and you have to have been on that team for 1 year. It doesn't have to be that team necessarily, but during your time practicing as a DBT therapist, you need to have been on a team for a full year. But at the time of application, it is really important that you are actively a part of a team and practicing regularly.
What about any skills training group experience?
Yeah, so you have to have skills training experience. So you need to have read the skills in Marcia's manual, Marcia Linehan's manual. You need to have completed the homework in those and participated in those modules, potentially even as a student, or have taught those skills, whether that's in a group or individually with clients.
Okay. Any other components that are important to know about?
So another component is a letter of recommendation from the team leader. If you are the team leader, then we just ask that there's a letter of recommendation from somebody who is familiar with your actual treatment delivery. And so in order to get that recommendation letter, you will provide us with their name and email address, and we'll reach out to them for them to submit that letter of recommendation directly to DBT-LBC.
Yeah, and another component of the application is DBT related training. The requirement for the application is that you have received 40 didactic training hours that are specific to DBT. DBT-LBC is not associated with any particular training organization and doesn't endorse training themselves. We're not a training organization. So it doesn't specify where you receive the training, just that they're training specific to DBT. They are currently accepting online or virtual trainings at this point, which is a great win for the pandemic and just really in general. Your training experiences could be coursework, seminars, workshops, like online learnings, in-service trainings at an employer or an internship site. It's not just the clinical experience. You have to have had that didactic part. But your didactic part could be those online and virtual trainings. And
I'm going to jump in and share, unless Amy, you have a question about that.
I don't.
Okay. I was going to share about the mindfulness requirement. I think there's a lot of questions about this because there's several different ways that you can meet this requirement and several ways that don't count, and it's important to know those distinctions. So you need formal training in mindfulness or practice in mindfulness that's met by at least one of 4 different ways, 4 different experiences. So one is that you can attend a mindfulness retreat for 4 days or more. And if you provide, the information about the dates that you participated in that would be sufficient for that requirement. You could also have a regular practice in a formal way, whether that's regular practice of yoga, regular practice of meditation, being a part of like a meditation group or community group. It's important to note though that practice of mindfulness in consultation team or in group isn't sufficient for the requirement. It's great practice, yet it's not enough to sort of meet this requirement. And some other ways, you can also be formally accepted as a student of a recognized mindfulness teacher or Zen teacher. They would need to provide a letter to sort of attest to that. And then last but not least, you could also attend like a formal mindfulness training. It could be delivered as a part of being at a mindfulness retreat. It could be formal instruction that's a part of consultation team, or classes that you take, supervision. You know, there's many ways that you could meet it, as long as it's formal teaching of mindfulness and not just practicing it as a part of consultation team. So that's
wonderful. So now that we have those components down, I think the place that people have the most questions, and where I certainly have been told that the most revisions come in, are with those good old case write-ups. So is there any information that you all can give regarding these write-ups that are a requirement of the application?
What is required, and all of what's required is written in the application. That's true for all the other steps too, that there's a question and then it says, here's what it takes to meet these criteria. Here's what you need to, in order to be successful. And it's all written in there, which is why, you know, Kim's tip to like hit an X and flip through to see what all is needed is really helpful, because it's all there. You don't have to like memorize what we're saying here. So I want to go through what is required and then try to give you some things to highlight that might just be helpful. So it's going to be a little bit of information, but hang in there. It's mostly written down on the application itself. So you will need to submit 3 DBT cases that have successfully been completed through stage 1. A completed case is defined as a client who was accurately assessed as having treatment needs that would be benefited by DBT. The client was clearly oriented to treatment. The structure, the theory, the goals, targets, commitments, all of those pieces. They had to have been enrolled in skills training and received regularly scheduled individual DBT therapy to be considered a stage 1 client. They must have also received and had phone coaching available to them. The therapist needed to be on a consultation team. They needed to complete a diary card with relevant treatment targets that met the stage 1 DBT hierarchy. They needed, not only their individual therapist, but also their skilled trainers need to be on the DBT consultation team that met regularly. So I'll say one more thing about this. It kind of lends back to what we were speaking about in the application earlier. A spot where people can sometimes get tripped up is making sure that the dates that they've put in for their employers and they put in for their consultation teams, which is a spot that you fill out in the demographic kind of section of the application, is lining up with these cases that they're submitting. So if you're saying that you're treating a client from January 1, 2019 to January 1, 2020, you need to have dates of an employment and be actively in your list of consultation teams that you've been a part of, have been on a consultation team during that time for that client to be counted. So those dates and those cases need to all line up. But a client dropping out of treatment is not a completed case. They have to have successfully moved to the end of stage 1 treatment. And something else that's in the instructions that I want to highlight is to not include any identifying information in the cases. We ask you to de-identify all of that. If you do put identifying information, the reader will stop reading right away and just kick it back to you and ask you to de-identify it, and then you'll have to resubmit.
I think you hit everything.
Yeah, I mean, they have to have had what constitutes full comprehensive stage 1 DBT. And so, yeah, those are all the pieces that includes. So part of what you're going to be asked for in the cases that you're submitting are to, when you write up that stage, to walk through demonstrating that it is a successful completion of stage 1, And so part of what you're doing is you're going to be stating the initial client goals in the client's own words. And so I think this can be a tricky spot because as therapists, we think about things in our language, but we're actually asking for people to put in that client's words. What did they say? They didn't really come into your office saying, I would like to increase my emotion regulation. I mean, that's like not typically what we see. The client's likely to say, I don't want to die all the time. I don't want to be this miserable. And so we want like that phrase, I don't want to die all the time. Then you also list how that, what the client said, maps out to the targets of your treatment. So we want those targets to be objective, observable, and behaviorally specific. And so when we're saying behaviorally specific, observable, something that you can actually see, we're talking about it in frequency, intensity, duration, not just listing the skills. So not just saying, okay, I want more motion regulation, more opposite action to happen. Like we do want our clients to be practicing skills, but our therapist targets need to be listed as observable, objectable, behaviorally specific. So for example, eliminating non-suicidal self-injury by cutting and burning from 3 times a day to none would be a goal that would move our client from that client's own words, and that would demonstrate a successful completion of stage 1. And so then after that, you will list the outcomes that have been measured that line up to those targets. So for example, you could list things like, as tracked on the diary card, the client indicated no self-harm.
It's as long as it's being tracked and you can use the information, obviously they're going to be tracking those targets on their diary card. And all of that information, just to be sure and keeping up with that, we're not putting in any identifying information. That will be put in the write-up. We're not necessarily going to be required as clinicians to like give copies of these measures or diary cards or things along that line, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, you're going to ask to be typed up, to type up a write-up. There's not a word limit. You just type up kind of a paragraph of, well, multiple paragraphs potentially of that case.
Can I jump in, Amy? I realized I wanted to clarify something, and I apologize that I forgot to mention this distinction. So with the mindfulness requirement, back to that piece, it's not just formal training in mindfulness, but it's also demonstration of like an ongoing practice of mindfulness. So that second piece is really important. So you can't have just done training, but you're not actually practicing mindfulness anymore. You need to be demonstrating that you have an ongoing practice of mindfulness. So I would have been upset if I forgot to make that clarification.
Well, and it's an important piece too. It's not just about getting the training, but ensuring that you're also continuous that practice.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you guys have given us all the components. We've got the application, everything that we need for these case write-ups that I think give people a lot of anxiety, myself included here. So what now? Because my anxiety's eased a little bit, but we got to get to these next steps. So now what do we do?
So after you've submitted, the application gets approved, then your application will be updated so that you can then sit for the exam. And so at this point, you pay, it's a $270 fee to DBT-LBC for the exam, and then you pay a $150 fee directly to Pearson VUE. And so Pearson VUE is where the exam is taken. We have opened up all 12 months, so you can take the exam at any month. That is a change that we recently did during the pandemic. So there used to be specific months. Now you can take the exam any month, and then you sit for the exam. So once you register for the exam window, you read the book, read Marsha's text. That's what the exam is based off of, is Marsha's text. There is 120 multiple choice questions. Then, in addition to that, there is a validation article on our website under the exam dates and locations. So if you go under that tab, there is a validation article that will be super helpful when it comes to the exam.
One thing to say too, just to ease people's anxiety, is that you find out right away if you passed or not. So you will walk out and they will hand you a piece of paper that lets you know if you pass. So there's not going to be any limbo. You will know right away.
And like I said, the exam is directly out of her text. Then there really are no secrets. There's nothing hidden within the exam. It's straight out of.
I think people often ask, like, how do I study for this? And my answer to people is always read the book, review it again, look at the tables, look at the figures, look at the parts that you're like, what could I brush up on? It'll make you a better DBT clinician to just brush up on that. And like, that's what the exam is based off of. So yeah, just go back to the text. That's my recommendation over and over.
Going back to what we all should, have already originally read,
Right.
done with our training, the piece, hopefully what we're already doing day in and day out. So as you said, nothing's hidden, nothing's new. It's just putting it all out on the exam.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've done the application, we've done the exam. I know there's a big piece that we are still missing. So what is that piece?
That's the work product submissions, the video clips or whole sessions rather that you'll be sending in. So 3 consecutive sessions. And it also, you'll be, in addition to submitting the sessions, you'll also be submitting a session information form that has a lot of information just about like, who was the session with? Was it like a regularly planned session? Was it like a family session? Just kind of like the background of the session. And then there's also some information at the end specific to what stage of treatment is this client in, like what are their life worth living goals, and there's several other questions that are listed there just to explain more about, I'm watching this session, like I should know kind of where you are in treatment and what you're working on, and just to make sure that ultimately what I'm seeing is lining up with what you're saying you're working on and the person, what their goals are. And I think like the really big thing here, well, let me take it back a step. So you submit those videos, you submit the session information form, you submit their diary cards as well for those sessions. A coder is going to select one video at random. They're going to code it. If you pass the coding, then you are considered certified. And that's like the last big hurdle. Ultimately though, there's a backup. So if that one video fails, then they're going to randomly select another one of those videos. And then, you can then continue on and be certified after that video if that video passes. If that then fails, then you have to resubmit.
Okay, so I want to just quickly make sure that I've got it here. So you submit 3 videos of the same client initially. The
consecutive videos.
Consecutive.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't say that. They have to be 3 consecutive videos. They have to be in a row.
I think I did say
Okay.
that.
So 3 consecutive sessions with the same client, obviously consecutive. There we go. Okay. And then the coder will pick one at random. So I may submit 3 of them and they might pick the second one that I submit.
Right.
And if for whatever reason I need some fine tuning of my skills, or those videos aren't coding in the way that they need to for certification, I have the opportunity to submit 3 more consecutive sessions of a different client.
Yeah.
And then again, if that for some reason does not pass, then I have 12 months to receive some consultation, supervision, fine tune my skills a little bit, and then I can come back and submit those videos. And at that point, do I have to redo the application or the case write-ups, or are those still valid?
Yeah. Those are still valid. You just have to resubmit the videos.
Okay, perfect.
Right.
I think the one other thing to say, sorry, Lauren, do go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, a really big thing with this is that because you don't necessarily know if those videos are going to code to adherence, I think it's better to be in a position where you have a lot of options than to not have any. So recording, getting permission from your clients to record, several cases if you can, and to be having your colleagues watch those videos to help you fine tune and select those 3 consecutive videos that you think that they, as a team think are going to be the best ones to get you that, to not have to go through that process again, basically is important. So it's a nice way it's nerve-wracking to have to show your session videos to your colleagues, and it's like such a great way to get feedback and to help you in this process.
One of the things that LBC really promotes too is that you make your client a part of that process. So, when they sign off the consent forms, you're sharing that with them, you're giving them feedback about what you're learning and what you're experiencing too. So the client is an active part of that process, which is a really neat thing, I think.
Yeah, my clients have really felt like empowered and like they're giving back to like the make the world a better place, which I thought was cool. The one other thing that I think we said, but and I know I touched on this in the one earlier, is that the 3 cases that you submit earlier in the application have nothing to do with this one case. They're separate. And I think the other distinction that I'm not sure if we said or not, but this work product video does not have to be a stage 1 client. The application 3 cases do have to be stage 1 clients. And so it's just different.
Yeah, that's a good
They
point
could
to
be the
make.
same if you would like to, but they don't have to be. But this one does not have to be stage 1 at all, and those do. So I just wanted to be clear about that part of it.
That's an important distinction because I actually submitted. I was doing DBT-PE with the patient that I submitted the videos, and it passed. So it wasn't necessarily stage 1.
Yeah,
Great. Yeah.
And one other piece I'll add to that, once you pass the exam, the application will be moved on to the work product. And before you can submit the videos, you have to submit attestation for permission to submit the videos that is specific to certification by DBT-LBC. So you'll be asked to submit that before submitting for the videos. But you likely would already have that because you would start videoing already.
So anything else about certifications before I get a little personal with you all on the certification process, but anything about the process of certification that you all want to ensure that people are understanding?
Everything is on.
Go ahead, Kim.
I would say that really look at the website. Everything is really spelled out on the website. We tried to go through it a little bit clearer here, and everything is outlined on the website. And also, once you start the application, everything is in there that you need. So if you can just, like, I know that the whole process seems super overwhelming, but once you start the application and start to get the ball rolling, you will see that it really is not as overwhelming. And I would say,
go ahead,
Jessica. Well, just the videos, right? Like, because I know that I mentioned in my team about taping and everybody was like, right? Like, it's anxiety provoking. And the more you tape, the less anxious you become. And it really is a perfect way of getting feedback and holding us accountable, right? Like, we drift. And so this is a perfect way to hold us accountable. And once you start taping and you just get into the habit of taping, then it really does lessen that anxiety. Seeing yourself, and we've all seen ourselves on Zoom, right? Like, so, I mean, that anxiety might be lessened already.
All of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think I was really worried about, is this going to highlight that I really don't know what I'm doing? And am I really incompetent? And it's anxiety provoking to turn something in and be judged and critiqued on these things. And so this process is set up to give you all the information, all the pieces that you need to be able to show that your competency. And so I hope this will ease some of those fears.
Oh, of course. I can speak for myself on that one, right?
And I think, like, even segueing from that, the fact that it's broken down into these steps, like, other than maybe in the back of your head thinking about recording, like, you just have that one step in front of you to focus on. Okay, you just have to do this application. Okay, now I just have to study for this exam. And I felt that pacing it in that way was really reduced a lot of my anxiety as well.
Yeah,
I like that.
Okay, so final question for today, and I'm going to give you guys a time limit with it. So in 60 seconds, can you tell me how you each felt that going through the certification process benefited you as a clinician? Lauren, I'm going to put you in the spotlight first, only because you're the first one on my screen.
I'll do it. So I think for me, it was really in line with my values to get the certification. I felt that I really wanted to abide by, like, doing evidence-based treatment at, like, the top level. And it was like a lot of self-validation to be like, yeah, like, kind of like what Jessica was saying, it was like empowering to get to that point of feeling that just knowing that like I'm practicing at a level that is adherent, and that felt really, really validating for me personally. And I think more practically too, within my organization, we have so many staff that we can't actually have one team. We break it up into several teams. And it was nice to be able to sort of step into a leadership role at my practice and be able to be a team leader for one of our sub teams, so that it's, there's a certified person that's, presiding over that team. So it's been both professionally nice to like be able to step up in that way, but then also really like, pat on the back, like, yeah, I'm doing right. I'm doing this well, It felt good.
Okay. Well, thank you. Kim, what about you?
I think for me, it was both professional and personal. It was definitely something in line with my values in terms of knowing that I'm doing the treatment as written, and accountability. I think accountability was one of the main pieces for me, because it's so easy to drift with the clients. And so accountability and knowing that I have the base to really come back to, and that I have been coded for adherence. And so that I can give the clients really what they're coming in for, right? Like they're coming in for the treatment that works. And so knowing that I can give them that is super empowering, and it feels good. It feels good to know that I put myself out there to be vulnerable and to get feedback. And it was, I think, again, a huge piece of it was accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Nikki, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely echo a lot of what they have said. I mean, for me, it's always been important to provide DBT as it was designed by Marsha Linehan, and this was the way to assure that I was doing that. I mean, I think it's helped me to stand out in terms of credibility with the public, and in providing training. But I really did learn this treatment a lot better than I ever would have. And the process of doing the text first, I think, really solidified that. Had I not been forced to like just be all up in this text for a long time beforehand, knowing I was going to get tested on it, I don't think I would have learned it as well. So that test pressure helped me to learn it better. And then that just trickled down into the cases and to just being able to apply it more. So I just learned so much from the process. It was difficult at times and totally worth it.
Great, well, thank you. Okay, Jessica, let's round us out for today.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it brief. Not my norm, but I'll try. I think I hinted to it. I have vulnerable struggled with some imposter syndrome like for my career, and I think it was helpful for that part of my brain to like reassure me in like a really value driven way instead of like a less effective way, that like I am doing what I believe in doing, and I'm giving an adherent treatment, and I've pursued the training. I did and that other people have looked and have coded me adherent. And I think that for my brain was like really reassuring.
Thank you all for answering my questions for today. And hopefully we're getting a lot of more individual clinicians certified. So thank you all.
Hi, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. We have a smaller group of our Brady Bunch joining us to talk specifically about program certification. So we just spent some time talking about individual certification, how clinicians can become certified. Those clinicians at times are also part of organizations. We want to help to get those programs certified as well. So thank you all for taking time to talk about this. So where do we even get started? Like, how do programs do this? Why should they do it? Give me all the information that you possibly can.
Well, I think that's there's a lot of things we can start off there with, Amy, but I really think the why is really, you think of DBT as a multi-mode team-based treatment, and that, individual certification is very important. And it's a great starting ground to establish the mode of individual therapy, and that clients and clinicians can have some assurance that they have been able to demonstrate the prerequisite training and work sample that really is essentially DBT. And that we really have to, you think about that's a great start to then the bigger part of how do we actually show that our program is actually following the treatment manuals and research that's out there, and really be able to provide a clear structure and guideline for us to be able to control for drift and to be able to establish across modes a system that ensures fidelity, which is exciting. It's exciting as a program leader to be looking at all these things we developed and then have people be able to come in and actually verify it that is DBT.
So they know when they're coming to you as DBT, coming to your program, that they're really getting what they're looking for.
Absolutely. And that we are providing what we are intending to as well.
And I just want to add to that, there's a lot of people that are saying they're doing DBT and a lot of programs that say they do DBT. And we get a lot of calls from people who've been to those programs and have not had good outcomes. And so to have that Linehan board actually put the stamp of approval that we are following the protocol appropriately, I think is assurance to the families that come to us that they're getting the treatment as it was designed to be delivered, and they can expect to get the kind of outcomes that come from that.
I know going through the process for us really helped us fine tune our program and do things, it highlighted the things we were doing really, really well. And then it helped us kind of figure out, can we do things better? And when we made those adjustments and we kind of, refined that process a little bit, we had better patient outcomes, and we also had our therapists were a lot happier. We worked better as a team together. We really kind of decreased our levels of burnout. All of these things I think are really important for the longevity of DBT programs.
I have to say, going through the process, I was really surprised by how much CBC got out of the certification process. Not only did it encourage us to really tighten up our program manual, that we now give that to trainees so they can actually read our policies and procedures. It used to be kind of just passed down through training, but now it's actually official, which has been a great help. Our program certifiers gave us really thoughtful feedback about how our team functioned in particular, also how to tighten up some of our long running adult skills group that we were sure were just completely adherent. Turns out they weren't. And I would argue that the program, our team in particular, grew so much. So more than just the approval, more than just the certification, it really gave us so much things that we're still continuing to implement, fold in, and grow from, even more than a year later.
And, it helps to identify blind spots. We had been doing 90-minute skills groups, for example, and the certifiers said, this is really not meeting criteria and you need to take it to 2 hours, and which we did. It took a few months to get everybody on board, including the clients. But since we did that, and they assured us that you will not run out of time. And it's been true. We've been able to fill up the entire 2 hours. So that little thing, along the way, there's little things that you just miss. You think you're getting it right and you miss, and it's useful to have outsiders give you some pointers for that.
So what is the actual process? How can a program who is interested, how can they get the ball rolling to get their program certified?
So I can actually speak to a little bit of that process. I've broken it down to about four. We have about 4 steps to this process. The first one is actually just a self-assessment. On DBT-LBC.org, there is something called the PFS. It's on the program certification website at the very bottom. You got to scroll all the way down there. And it's essentially kind of this checklist that each program kind of go through and see if you meet the criteria or the elements. So if you are taking a look at them and you're like, well, we do all this stuff, probably ready to go to step 2. And so step 2 is actually logging on to the DBT-LBC website. So whoever the team lead is will have access on their website, on their DBT-LBC login, to be able to kind of enter information regarding just team information. So it's going to be a little bit more information about your program, kind of who your team member is on. There's some questions about structure and format. And that thing probably takes about 45 minutes to kind of complete. There's going to be a manual actually coming out for team leads to take a look at that'll have all this kind of documented, and that'll be available shortly. So there's a ton of questions, about 45 minutes to complete that. That goes into our review process. We take a look at that. And one of the things we're really committed to is making sure that every program that starts the process can get through the process. We want every program that wants to be certified to get through certification. So if there are questions, if there is something that, we're kind of like, hey, like this might be something that, we're concerned about, we will absolutely reach out to the programs. We'll talk to them. We kind of help people problem solve. If there's questions about any of the process, like we're always available via email. We want to work with programs to be able to get through certification. So after kind of that initial application, that step 2 application, if all of that looks good, then you're approved for desktop review. And so that's kind of step 3 in the process. And so with the desktop review, this is the piece where it's a lot of paperwork. This is where the program manual has to kind of be compiled. And it looks really, really overwhelming. And a lot of programs have found that they already have a lot of this documentation. Like a lot of it's just kind of floating around in space, and you just got to put it together into one just kind of format. And if a program is doing DBT, a lot of it is pretty consistent, and you just have to kind of explain some of the policies, procedures. It feels like it's going to take a long time, and I don't know if you guys can speak to putting together your own program manuals. Like mine took me about maybe 2 to 3 hours to really kind of fully put together. I don't know if others have different time frames on that. So then the program manual and all the supporting documentations get submitted online, and that goes over to the reviewers, and the reviewers go through and actually read all the documentation, all of the manuals. Sometimes there's questions that come through. Sometimes there's just more information that's needed. Reviewers are in constant contact during the process with whoever the team lead is. So there's a lot of clarification. So we jump in and we're just observing and kind of asking a lot of questions. And after desktop review, so if all that looks great, we're assessing like, what does this DBT program look like on paper? Then we move into the site visit, which is step 4, and probably the best part of it all, because we get to see everybody in action. And this is where, so the site visit itself there's an interview with the team lead, there's a few therapist interviews, there are client interviews, and we observe a skills group, we observe team, and there's kind of this like debrief wrap up at the very end. And this is probably the best part, because this is where all the clients get to tell all the reviewers and everybody how awesome all the therapists are, and how awesome the program is, and how much it has actually changed their lives. So the best part to sit there is just to hear like all of the positive feedback from clients. And so there's kind of 4 steps to the process. The ideal kind of time length on this is about 6 months. That's what we're aiming for, from the initial kind of like submission of the application through desktop review, through the site visit. This can kind of vary based on the program. There's some changes that need to be made, or if there are just, delays in scheduling, stuff like that. But we're really trying to get programs from start to finish 6 months or less is what we're going for.
It's really doable.
Yeah.
Right. For you all, were there any fears that you had going into the process of program certification? And were any of your fears realized through that process?
Well, I think, we submitted everything. We thought we were on track with everything, but I think there was a little bit of a fear that we weren't going to pass on some level. And I was so surprised and pleased with the supportive quality of the site visit. The site visit was just so warm and positive, and the feedback was so helpful. So I think we all go into these things with a little nerves, and worry that we're not quite there. But I was surprised at how smoothly really it went.
I do have vivid memories of being particularly anxious that day on team when site visitors watched. And I agree, just a second you, Brett, I particularly loved the debrief meeting, and then the letter that followed up that basically that let us know that we were certified. And I agree, there were some blind spots that we couldn't necessarily see ourselves, that the site visitors really skillfully pointed out and actually helped us implement. That to me was actually the most valuable part.
And you know what, I want to add to that, that one of the things that struck me when the reviewers were here was the focus on preventing burnout, that they had lots of good suggestions on how to keep the team tight and feeling good about their work and not getting burned out. So it was just a very supportive experience.
Yeah, and I think, you know, for me and our team, sometimes it got, you know, the anxiety or fear was when we got narrowed down to a task. You know, is this going to be right or is this going to be wrong? And I think really getting back to the bigger picture of, you know, what do we all have a shared commitment for? And the shared commitment for is to develop, you know, to provide effective treatment for clients that actually aren't getting effective treatment. And I think the review process completely embodied that part of like, how do we really ensure doing effective treatments across lots of things? And that really just brought down the anxiety and really been able to have therapists and the program really highlight really effective things they're doing. And that the process was very responsive and highlighting what was effective. That was effective. That's a really good thing. And not just sitting there saying that's wrong. Yeah. And that was there wasn't that experience. It's something, there wasn't really anything that is wrong. It was more, how do we expand on things that we actually over time got narrowed on? So we were actually very grateful to get that feedback.
Can one of you please speak to some of the supports that are offered through program certification?
When it comes to the support, like we're not trying to go in and just audit programs and be like, this is right, this is wrong. Like, that's not the point. What we really want to do is really help programs be great DBT programs. And that's kind of why we signed up to do this. And as program reviewers, and like, we're really, really passionate about it. So in terms of the supports available, like once again, email is always open. So there is no silly question. There is no question too small. We are happy to answer any single question that comes up about program, the program manual, like the entire process. Like if there's a question, like please reach out and ask. And then kind of as we step through the process, like we are really cognizant about not letting kind of programs move into the next process if we think there's going to be an issue. Right. So we're communicating the entire time. We're kind of providing feedback, providing information so that every program can actually successfully get through the process. We really, really want that to be the case. We're going to do, Kim and I were talking about doing some open kind of time slots for people to ask questions about program certification. So there's just even more time for programs to ask questions, team leads to ask questions. And then the other piece is we want programs to feel supported even after they've gotten certified. So we're going to be opening up a monthly meeting for team leads to meet together and to kind of problem solve programs, the problems that might be coming up in their programs, and to get more support with each other, because we know that being a team lead of a program is really stressful at times. To have extra support that way. We also want programs to continue to reach out to us after they've been certified. If they have questions about anything, if they feel like, hey, like, wanted to add this program, we have a question about this element, like, we want to continue to be engaged with all of our programs that are certified as well. So we were really trying from the very beginning, like, it's always an open inbox. There's always somebody who's going to answer a question. There are no questions too small, all the way through kind of the end when you are certified. We want to continue to make sure that programs are reaching out and staying connected, and we're also supporting those programs as well.
Which certainly I think Dan speaks a little bit to what you said earlier, but helping to control from that drift, because even though a program becomes certified, allowing that support to continue really helps to prevent that then from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, there's that distinction. We're not a training organization. We're not going to provide training, but we are going to help bring together, you know, what is the research, what is the things that are coming out that actually helps ensure fidelity, and that there's a lot of ways and processes to ensure fidelity. And that's really what we're going to be helping doing. And at times we might tell people like, this might be something to go get extra training on, and we're not going to recommend who from, but highlighting where there might be areas from our assessment or that people are assessing. And I think that's the nice part. There's a lot of moving parts of programs. There's a lot of people within programs. And so having ongoing support to assess this, to help organize your priorities and goals is an effective thing.
And speaking of the people in the program, I think the certification process has been a great morale booster in our program, and our clinicians really feel proud to be, we're the only adolescent certified program in the area, and to be a part of that team is a feather in their cap. And they all feel ownership of that. I mean, every single clinician participates in the process in their own way, and there's a lot of pride there.
I agree. We thought we were doing it here in DBT. It's nice to know for sure, though.
Yeah.
And as the only certified program in New York State, we also feel a lot of pride about that.
What have you all seen as the most difficult part of the process thus far for program certification?
For me, I think it was just when I did that self checklist, and it just looked so daunting, all of the different, right there, we could identify 2 or 3 things that we needed to tighten up. And so just pulling all that together, I spent more time at that pre-application phase, like considering putting things together, tightening things up. But that, of course, that was the process, right? Like that's what it's all about. So, but that was work.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It was the sheer executive function of pulling those documents together, scheduling interviews with parents, clients, groups, teams, just the sheer planning around it. And when we broke it down bite by bite, it was easier and definitely overwhelming at first. Doable and overwhelming.
I think actually one of the hardest things is therapists and team leads actually overcoming their own anxiety and wanting to do things perfect. And allowing themselves to be fallible. And that, I think, if we just describe what we're doing and be open to the feedback and not being defending the way we do things, we actually learn a lot.
Yeah.
And so I really encourage people to just approach, don't avoid, don't try to rewrite the book in order to make this perfect. The book's already written. Just describe, what do you do out of these treatment manuals that you're setting, and be open to the feedback. And it becomes a much more rich learning environment for you, for your rest of your team, when that is the thing that people are starting out the process as. When it starts off as, we got to do this perfectly and right, I think it becomes stressful like anything.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. The question that I think people ask a lot of times is why? Why should they, and there's a should there, right? Why should they do program certification? How does it benefit them? How can it strengthen things? Like, can we answer the why?
Well, I think we've kind of answered it throughout the
You have, yes, you absolutely have.
But I think it strengthens adherence. It reduces drift, or allows you to catch it when it's happening. It attracts top therapists to a program that's certified. It attracts clients who are interested in getting programs that are doing what they say they're doing. We enjoyed the whole process. I agree with Dan, that being open to the feedback and being willing to make those changes makes us better clinicians, makes the program a better program, so we get better outcomes. And the clients loved it. I have to agree. I remember when I was doing individual certification and the anxiety about taping, and asking clients for the taping. And I had that same experience when we were being observed, but the clients absolutely loved it. I think they liked the idea of grading us, or, it being kind of turning the tables a little bit on us in a way.
I think, just to second that, the thing that I took the most away was that it strengthened my team. We got a lot of feedback about making the team therapy for the therapist and moving in a more emotion-focused direction that CBC very much has been able to do, and team does feel more supportive and more open and closer than ever before. I think we do it for the clients to provide that evidence-based gold standard treatment. CBC also does a lot of training. We have externs, interns, and postdoctoral fellows, and to know that we're training them and hopefully the next generation of DBT clinicians feels really important to me, that we're doing it in an evidence-based way. And yeah, and it's good to know that we're on track to prevent that drift.
Anything else that you all feel programs need to know about the certification process?
Well, I really encourage programs to be looking at the scholarships. That there is some very wonderful people that have donated resources to the scholarship for the DBT-LBC, and that allows programs to access some of those scholarships to offset some of the cost. It's program scholarship is very underutilized, so I encourage people to look at that. That I think the other big one I encourage people to do is start describing what you're doing and just start applying. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just
Yep.
do it.
Do it. Just do it.
We'll mull it around forever, but if you start now, you will get close. You're a couple steps closer to getting this done.
Okay, so we have with us to close out our panelists for today, we have Belinda and Emily with us to talk about volunteer opportunities for DBT-LBC. I'm kind of going to rely on the two of you to educate us all about DBT-LBC and the different volunteer opportunities that are present. So who would like to get us started for today?
Well, I can start.
Okay, so first question regarding volunteering. What are the things that DBT-LBC does besides certification that volunteers can get involved in?
Yes, so I have the honor of being involved in the legislative committee, which is an interesting, effort to think about. And I know just in hearing Marcia talk for many years about how important it was for her to bring DBT to everyone, any income, any local level. Being on the legislative committee was really exciting to me. Marcia was also, had been talking about that for many years. So when I found out about the legislative committee and what they were doing, it was so exciting. And they've actually made a lot of inroads.
So it's really trying to get it accessible to everyone.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Of course. Now, Emily, what about you? I know you're in a different part of the volunteer part for DBT-LBC. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I'm on the communications committee, and our primary aim is to put out the newsletter each quarter of the year. But the neat thing that we're trying to incorporate more of, that I've been privileged enough to be able to sort of be involved with, is the social media accounts. And so I'm trying to make also get our Instagram account up and rolling this week. Hooray. So everybody follow us on Instagram as well as on Facebook. And I'm going to try to, with the help of some other wonderful volunteers, put out some great content that's informative, but also fun and engaging, and try to really broaden the interaction among DBT practitioners as well as those interested in certification across the nation and even the world. And that's really, really cool to be a part of something bigger than just your local community. So with the newsletter committee, with our communication committee, putting forth the newsletter, we do update on legislative updates as well as certification processes and scholarships. And we're really involved with promoting and highlighting recently certified individuals and programs. So it's just a great way to keep people involved and knowledgeable about the DBT-LBC community at large. And it is exciting work. It's exciting to be a part of it. There's this great sense of energy that comes with that really motivates me in my personal practice as well, and in the collaboration that I do with my community to better inform about DBT certification and why it's important and what DBT is. And that's the mission of DBT-LBC as well.
Well, Belinda and Emily, thank you so much for your time today and for explaining more about the volunteer opportunities for DBT-LBC. You certainly helped to provide some more information. So thank you so much.